Hello and welcome to the DJ Force 10 in Conversation podcast, episode 118. And to continue my special lockdown consecutive shows, I bring you this week Amaya from the group Maud The Moth. They are a group out of, well, originally she's from Spain, but she's based in Scotland right now. And yeah, it's an incredibly haunting, atmospheric, really, really beautiful music that she makes. So do check it out if you like that kind of like dark wave, kind of piano-based synth rock type thing. Oh, it's absolutely brilliant. I love it. And yeah, that's why I have her on the show. We'll go into more details during that, but she does have a new single out right now called As Above, So Below. Let's see if I can get that out. And yeah, she's got an album on the way as well. So do keep an eye out for that. Do check her music out. There's a couple of live casts she's been doing, and they just sound absolutely wonderful. But yeah, apart from that, thank you for last week with the Enter Shikari podcast and the August Burns Red. Both widely received and again, good feedback. But yeah, that's I just want to give another shout out to you lovely people that have been listening, and I hope this is giving your lockdown or quarantine or whatever you're doing right now in whatever part of the world you are a little bit of something to do, really. But I'm going to continue along this week. I have many, in fact, every day this week we have a podcast coming. So to sort of give you a taste, tomorrow should be Psycho Stick. And then we've got Our City Fires. Tomorrow is Lost. And then we're going to end the week with Gus G of Firewind. He is formerly of Ozzy Osbourne as well. But he is an absolute maestro of a guitar player. But yeah, right now we are going to speak to Amaya from Maud The Moth. Enjoy. On today's show, I have Amaya from Maud The Moth. Welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem at all. So, yeah, welcome to the show. We're here to talk about your music, which, first off, I just want to say is absolutely beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much.
When your people approached me for like interviews and things like that, I went and obviously listened. And just blindly say yes.
Which is not something that can be taken for granted.
No, exactly.
The listening part, I mean.
I've done that before and regretted it, you see. So, but no, I must say it's absolutely beautiful music you make. It's so atmospheric and just sort of like really haunting. It's full of drama. It's full of, you know, just the only way I could really sums it all up is beautiful. So.
Thank you.
Excellent. And you've got you've got a couple of albums out, but you've got a new album coming. It is out in May the 1st.
Well, yeah, that is the idea. Obviously, with the current situation, I think most musicians were in like a relatively wonky position where things are being pushed back. At the moment, that date was like placed there because I had a couple of really cool gigs coming up, including support for Jarbo in London.
Oh, wow.
And it was also taking into account the amount of time that the vinyls and the CDs were going to take to be pressed.
Yeah.
Obviously, the factories got more important things to do at the moment, including not dying.
Yes.
So kind of like cutting them some slack with that, and well, I guess we'll see. I think everybody's being really understanding with the situation. So yeah, it's all a bit like in the air and different from, I don't know, I guess what we're all used to.
Yeah. I mean, if it's any consolation, you're not alone in this. I've interviewed.
I know.
It's been a good time for me to do interviews. I'll tell you that, because a lot of you guys are at home. So yeah, no, it's got to be a sort of a real sort of kicker at the moment. But it kind of gives you, I don't know. It's a weird thing. It can kind of prepare you for most things now.
I guess as a musician, you end up being prepared for most things.
Yeah, there is that too.
Especially if you've ever been on tour. Yes,
I mean,
just kind of really, really builds up your character.
It does. It really builds the dealing with ambiguity and grey areas and such what. So
and the unexpected. So I was talking to this friend yesterday, and I told her that we have this saying in Spain, which is like when like everybody's doing like crap, like then that's like a stupid person's consolation. I don't know if that makes sense. Like it's like a very very loose translation. So kind of like if everybody's fucked up, you're not allowed to be like comforted by that, because that's like just kind of giving up on hope.
Yeah.
But I actually think that like I don't really agree with that. It's not, obviously I'm not like happy that everybody's screwed, but it does really put things into perspective. And like the fact that I've had festivals and some gigs cancelled doesn't even compare with like some of my friends who've had like whole European or worldwide tours cancelled, and we're all in this together. And I think it's like pretty amazing how people are reacting, or most people are reacting to each other. And I don't know. I mean, I'm obviously disappointed that all the gigs have been pushed back, and like I can't do the things that I'd been planning for so long. But I don't know. I'm also having the opportunity to like focus on. I started writing another album, other releases that I wanted to work on. So you just like shuffle things around and try to focus on the things that you can do rather than like just kind of sulk.
Yeah, no, definitely. You have to keep your brain active for one.
Yeah, sure.
That's the one thing I found being sort of on lockdown with me and my family. It's sort of keeping everyone occupied because they all know it's outside the norm and things like that. And the fact that they can't go out, the fact they can't see their friends, it's quite a sort of quite mentally challenging for them. But the fact of like being a creative like yourself, it's you do have that kind of like opportunity to really, put that sort of like talent or your passion to the test. Going through something like this, you're in kind of a forced lockdown. You're, you've got the sort of the instruments, if you will, to do what you need to do. It's just sort of whether or not you can get your brain in gear and sort of say, because you're now forced to do it.
Yeah.
It's not like where you can kind of not put it off, but you can go off and do something else to kind of get away from it. But you kind of know it's always there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think that like, with arts in general, like lots of people have this kind of idea that it's like this magical inspiration that suddenly like dawns over you like some magical mist.
Yeah.
And it really isn't. Like it's like 90% just getting at it and like plowing on. And then magically you do sometimes get ideas, but I think it's mostly just like random sounds that just get like I think the artist's work is more like a curator or like or you're just like you're just boycotting certain things. Like you're like, oh, this idea is crap, that's totally not going in there. But it's like, oh, I'll generate some more ideas, maybe one of this will kind of like will not be crap. So you just keep doing that, and if you do it enough times, you've got an album. So
yeah, it's very true. It's very true. One of my writer friends had like when they started out, they said they just started to write something every day, even if it was just like a sentence, and then that sentence turned into a paragraph. That paragraph turned into a page, and eventually they had, the makings of a story. And they've now had books published and stuff like that, which is fantastic, and that's how they started. It was just like, and this is what I've kind of like been saying to a few people as well, just saying, look, just do something every day that you wouldn't normally have the time to do. And by the end of it, you will be better at it, but you might have found something out you didn't know before.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Yeah. So I just want to get a little bit of history on your I'll call it a band or a solo project, kind of both, isn't it?
Yeah, it has actually been both. I guess initially it was created as a solo project because when I started, I had just I had been in this rock band for like 6 years, and it just dissolved. Okay. So then I took up this project, which I had really had like from my teenagehood. Like it's something that I've been writing songs for, and like the whole concept of it was just kind of like alter ego, I guess. But I've always really, and I still do, like, enjoy playing music with other people very much. So I think initially I really wanted to make it into a band.
Yeah.
So there were people like who came in and then left, and the project changed a lot. Well, sometimes it wouldn't work. Also, the idea of having, like, I don't know, it's like it's something that is so focused on, like, my compositional ideas that it's hard to find people who want to, like, slot into that. You know, like, it's. Yeah. Anybody who has bands understands, or even like in any kind of like team working situation, that people want to feel like they are part of something and they're contributing, and there's like a lot of like ego management, a lot of like, you know, finding, and so it's always really, really complicated to find people who kind of fit the picture perfectly, I think. And in the last year, especially because I was in Edinburgh, I was like quite isolated. The violinist left. He lives in London now. And I kind of like decided just to go for it on my own, which was the initial idea.
Okay.
So at the moment, the live part of the project is quite different from the album.
Yeah.
I still use like a lot of live looping and so on. So it's not just piano and vocals, but it is much more naked, much more raw than the actual album, the studio material.
Yeah, and people could check that out, because as I was sort of researching, doing this beforehand, I did come across the video of the live stream you did on the 29th.
Oh yeah, this weekend. Yeah,
this weekend, and that was amazing. It was like you said, it was like you mentioned the looping. It was a great use of that.
Cheers, yeah.
I was like, I've seen like rappers, I've seen obviously there's some like pop musicians that kind of do it as well, or have done it on the sort of like live scale, but it's always kind of basic guitar tapping, and then, you know, but what I was seeing from you was like vocal harmonies and all that kind of stuff going on, and I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, I think I've always been really, really interested in looping, and I am on like my 4th looper, I believe. Okay. I've actually moved into like a non-looper situation where I just do it all out of Ableton Live. Okay. I just haven't yet mastered that. So the one that I showed in the streaming video was the setup that I was touring with last year. And I think that like looping is really cool, but it should never take control over the song or like the performance. And I do agree that a lot of looping videos, especially like showcasing looping videos that you see, they're just kind of like very blocky. Like you make a harmony and then you just make a melody or a bass, and then you just like keep repeating the same thing over and over again, building multiple instruments. Yeah. So you just ultimately limit it to having an A-B song, even if you have like loopers that can deal with multiple channels, then you always end up with a repeating structure, like a very pop structure, which I am not very much a fan of in my in my music. So
really,
so yeah, I don't know. I have had to like play around quite a lot with with loopers, and I think they're an amazing tool, but you have to be a bit careful to not let them take control.
Yeah, there is such a thing as overusing it, to sort of like, you know, I guess minimize what you do or minimize what you have to remember. But the way you used it was great. I really love the single you released, the as above so below. I almost got that wrong. That was the first thing I heard of yours, and like I said, that was really haunting and quite dramatic and yet relaxing as well, which was fantastic. But I really enjoyed the Mirror Door as well, which was one of the tracks you played on that live stream.
That was a bit of like it wasn't planned. I just really love that song so much, and I just wanted to play it. That is in the album. That is unreleased at the moment.
Okay.
So yeah, by PR standards, it shouldn't be there. But yeah. Who
in these
cares?
Times, it doesn't matter.
Who cares? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I did have a sort of question about what your plans are. But obviously, they've all been kind of like pushed back with everything that's going on. But like, what is it still? Are you still planning to have it released on the May 1st, like as a digital format?
I think it might be pushed back.
Okay.
Till June. So
okay.
because the main idea of having like an online, even if it's an online release, is that people can at least like do pre-orders.
Yes. Yeah.
Obviously, because I'm a DIY artist, so I've invested like all my life savings on this.
Yes.
So there needs to be, as much as you want to be like, just put it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you kind of like need to have a bit of structure with releases.
Yeah.
So so he, like my PR, he advised that we pushed it a bit back, and I think that's probably a wise idea.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right on that front, especially if you're.
Sorry, yeah.
I was going to say, especially if you're releasing it yourself, and you are putting your own sort of money on the line, you need that money to be, or you need that to be channeled properly on that front. I've come from a sort of DIY background when it comes to music and things. Obviously I didn't have this sort of situation to deal with, but I know the sort of like the financial part of it very well.
Of course.
It's I can definitely see why it's a wise move on the sort of like on that front, I think, to push it back, because I think it is something that does need that sort of like definite concentration where you can actually do something afterwards as well. Because if you're releasing physical product, obviously you've got CDs. Are you doing vinyl as well?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
So, especially with vinyl, all the sort of like vinyl stores are closed, for instance. And that must be quite difficult. But obviously, if you can get it, like if you can push it back, then yeah. So,
I mean, I wouldn't want to push it back until like a year, something absurd like that. But I think like 1 month or a couple of months might be like the benefit is worth the wait.
Yeah, especially when you've started the sort of press role, like you're doing this interview right now, for instance. But especially if you started that side of things, we can, we obviously, as a sort of like person within the sort of, I guess a journalist of some kind. It was. I can hold on to this if we need to. We can delay it if we want to. So I can be flexible as well if that's needed. On that front. But I was going to say let's talk a bit about the album because we haven't really got. We've talked about one of the songs already, the As Above, So Below. But the album's called Orphan. And can you tell us like a bit more about the sort of like concept of the album or what we can expect from it?
So I find that like I'm kind of like obsessed with this idea of uprootedness and like belonging or homes. Like what does a home mean? As rather like a house. In this album, the title, it's mashing up a couple of ideas. There's this Orphane is actually like this nymph that lived in the underworld.
Okay.
But I was reading this book on like female in like ancient civilizations, like in Greek and Roman civilization, or even earlier than that. And I just found it really, really interesting, and that like a lot of these cultural components like have influenced the society that we have right now, and like a lot of like the societal expectations that that are laid upon women as well, especially like in like Spanish society, for example, that I think it's still quite sexist. Compared to like more North European countries. And so I was reading about this, and I found really interesting that that name from this nymph came from the root orphan, which actually means like absence of light or absence of the father. So it was like this idea of the father being the light.
Yeah.
And I just found that extremely sexist.
Yes.
But also really interesting, like the idea of like having this like your parents being like this light that's kind of like guiding you into the world. And yeah, I don't know. It was all like a big mash of concepts and ideas that kind of really tapped into this path of like uprootedness that I've kind of like been drawing, I guess, with my music. My first album was called Home Futile Home.
Oh, okay.
And then the second one, yeah, they've all been written in like moments where I've just kind of like, since I left home, I've just kind of been a bit of a nomad. Like I lived in Southampton for a bit, then I moved to Edinburgh. And so it's just kind of like this eternal immigrant kind of point of view, where you just carry like this cultural baggage, which isn't always like, sometimes it's positive, a lot of the times it's negative. To which extent it becomes like part of who you are, it's kind of up for debate, I guess. It just kind of never stop evolving.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, like this album kind of draws all of these ideas or like individual development into a kind of like a little world, like a self-contained world.
Okay.
Where parts of the, like, I don't know, some, like, for example, some of the feelings of trauma that people might have are kind of reflected like as the underworld.
Yeah.
I like that idea as well. That's taken from Greek mythology, that like the underworld was just like in direct contact with reality. So there was this contact of like being like dying and being reborn constantly, you know, like you're not really separated with it. It's something that forms part of daily life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it kind of like reflects like the last years of my life, like all the processes that I've gone through, that I've been dealing with like some personal issues and stuff. And it's just helped me to see it like that.
Yeah.
As a kind of like a fable almost, where you can put like a face onto a problem that you can't really pinpoint exactly, but you make a song and it's now like this person, you know, and it's kind of like almost therapeutic. It's like a purging. I find that like music is to me like just something to purge stuff out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess this like album reflects quite a lot the last 4 or 5 years of my life and what I've gone through.
Okay. Excellent. That's like, I don't know what else to say from it. So that's cool. So what brought you to England, just out of interest? I mean, obviously, you are sort of native of Spain. But you said you lived in Southampton and now up in Edinburgh. But yeah, what brought you here? What was the?
So after I finished my undergrad, I landed in this like in the middle of this massive crisis in Spain. So I was like not really very excited with like the professional opportunity that I was getting.
Okay.
I was actually, contrary to popular belief, paying my rent off playing gigs rather than my degree. So I decided to do a master's on something that would kind of like stem from what I'd studied, and I was like more excited about. So that was acoustics, and I started a master's there, and I got an Erasmus program. And I could have gone to Denmark or the UK, but because I wanted to, I don't know, I've always like listened to lots of bands from the UK, and I kind of like was very interested in the musical scene here.
Okay.
So that kind of made the choice for me, and so I moved to Southampton. I did my master's in ISVR, which is a really cool acoustics center down there.
Yeah.
And then while I was there, I just met a bunch of people who were doing PhDs, and I was like, oh, I could do one of these. It looked cool. Little did I know. But yeah, well, I was still like in my very, very naive state of like thinking PhDs were like just a walk in the park and just like really nice and cool, and you just got to hang out with your friends in your office all day long. I applied for one in Edinburgh in musical acoustics. and I got it. So I moved here. That's been quite an experience. I finished now. So now just doing music.
Oh, cool. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I don't live too far from Southampton, so
Cool.
I'm up sort of the Surrey area of the world, sort of South London.
Yeah.
Ish area. So no, that's cool. I'm always curious what brings people to UK, because I moved out of it for a little while and came back. So I was just curious. So I've got a couple of questions left for you. Then I can let you sort of like get on with the rest of your day, if that's all right. So these are sort of questions that I do ask sort of every musician that I speak to, just to sort of gauge where they've come from. But what would you say are your 3 top albums that have kind of shaped you to be the musician and person that you are today?
I actually got asked this by Echoes and Dust, and I really, really struggled.
Okay.
Because I am obviously very, very influenced by metal. Like, I do listen to metal regularly. I guess that's like my go-to scene, or like the thing that I consider myself to be more part of. But obviously my music isn't metal. And also, like, my background as a child, like my early experiences with music were mostly either my granddad like singing traditional Spanish songs to me,
okay,
or classical music. So it's really hard. I don't know. I mean, some of the albums that I mentioned in Echoes and Dust were the self-titled album by Alice in Chains. Alice in Chains was like one of my favorite bands through like half of my teenagehood.
Nice.
Then there was another, which more? I absolutely love Ulver, but they have this album, Marriage of Heaven and Hell, that's just like constant, what the fuck? Like, it's like, what is even going on here? And I absolutely love it so much. I think it's like a sneak peek into the creative process.
Yeah.
Of just going with the flow, like having some lyrics to jam over, and just letting the piece of the work, which in that case is like William Blake's poetry, just like take over.
Yeah.
And I think it also reflects really well like this constant, almost like Tibetan wheel of inspiration in art, like you create something and then you never know what that's going to inspire in someone else. So I really like that they do that with that book of poetry. And then I also mentioned Jarbo's Sacrificial Cake, because again, I think I'm also like a really big fan of like Tori Amos and a bunch of other singer-songwriters like that. But I think like what Jarbo did, like that was like so early on as well. And she's just her life as well. Like if you listen to some of her interviews, she's like such an interesting person. So, I also mentioned like some classical pieces. Like I love Ravel very much, and Debussy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Those are definitely something that I had to like sieve out of the pool of salad of influences.
Excellent. I'm going to check out a couple of those. Obviously, I know the Alice in Chains one quite well, but the other two I don't. So that's why I asked, because it's sort of a discovery piece for me, as well as sort of like giving people your kind of where you've sort of come from. So
yeah.
Cool. And finally, last question. What are your hobbies away from music? So when you aren't writing, performing, doing anything like that, what do you do to kind of like wind down, or if you need to sort of like escape from it for a little bit?
I really like animals, and I miss having cats very much. That's definitely my top one hobby, being in close proximity to cats. But I also like gardening very much.
Okay.
I live in a flat, so I don't have a lot of gardening opportunities. I do take up all of those that come my way. Be it a magically sprouting mango on the kitchen counter, which literally happened in Scotland. I was like, hey, go for it, pal. Don't let anybody stop you. So yeah, I don't know. I really, really like gardening. When I've had like access to a garden, I've kind of like tried to grow my own stuff, and I really enjoy that very, very much. Awesome. Just being in like contact with anything like that's not civilization, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a bit,
yeah, no, that's fair enough. That's cool. Thank you. So yeah, that's it, Amaya. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do appreciate your time and everything, and but good luck with your music. I hope it doesn't delay your album much longer. What's going on right now, but yeah, stay safe and all that kind of good stuff.
Same to you.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day. All right.
Same. Bye bye.
Bye bye.